Yesteryear Untold. We're back again at it.
All right, episode 3. We made it.
Yeah, and I feel like every week it's getting weirder and weirder, our topics. So I won't share what this one is yet, but it's definitely ridiculous. Actually, it doesn't even matter if I share it yet because people can read and see what the title is.
Yes, and a guest told us, a listener is the person who had told us about this topic and they wanted to hear. So thank you.
Yeah.
We love hearing from listeners.
So I'm this one, I got to be honest, like doing the research and stuff. And I actually started looking at pictures and like just it's a weird one, but it's honestly, it was a little bit eye opening as well at the same time. Some things I learned about it that I didn't know before. I feel like, all right, so we talk about this is history that's been untold, and that's kind of a loose reference and a loose statement. The point of this show is to highlight things that are really interesting that just don't get the limelight that they should. And I say that and preface that because I feel like I've heard of this before in some way many moons ago, but I never knew what I know now. And so that's what makes it worthy of being a part of this show and sharing, because, you know, as people are listening right now, they are like, oh yeah, I knew about that, or I, saw a movie about it, or, this and that, but really you don't know about it unless you're a historical expert who's, studying everything, especially Japanese history and culture. But yeah, it was interesting for me to dive in because when you first sent it to me and I was like, yeah, like immediately, like, yeah, just the what it is like, yeah, I want to talk about this.
No, I'm hoping this episode will be riveting. I was completely absorbed in some of the back history on it, and I knew a little bit about this just like you. And I think that when I think of it, unfortunately, I think of Hollywood and I think of Tom Cruise.
Yeah.
But I mean, at least that put it out there in society. But yes, this topic is deep. It can be, in Western society, it can be depressing for people to talk about this type of topic. But when we're in the Japanese culture, and I want to kind of reference this a little bit later, it has a different meaning. And
it's
I
very
think
honorable.
that we should.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
The best way to put it. And I won't share more and steal any of the thunder that I know that you're going to bring with it. So let's start first with talking about you a little more. So we get to know each other. Obviously you and I know each other, but we're actually getting to know each other through this too.
Yeah, we are.
More. So I think that's helpful. So I feel like we graduated high school the same time, the same year.
2000.
Yes. Which ages us where we are now, which it's whatever. But
20 years.
I know 20 years ago
years.
is when we wrapped that up. And God, wow. And then we ended up at colleges within 20 miles of each other, like randomly those 4 years.
Yeah, where is Bridgewater? It's like in Bridgewater, right?
Yeah.
The town of Bridgewater.
Yeah.
And I went to school in Stanton, which is, I don't even think it's 20 miles. I think
it's probably not.
Less than.
Yeah, like we were literally the closest college to us was JMU and then Mary Baldwin. I mean, that was literally that was probably the next schools to us, and maybe a couple other smaller ones I can't remember. But it's weird when I think about it. So we graduated same year. In the same 4 years, we were in the same area, in the Shenandoah Valley area. And
where did you hang out? Like, where did you hang out?
Usually JMU.
Okay. Yeah, and I went up to towards Lexington, hung out at VMI, went to Tech a lot.
Okay. Yeah. So you went that way, and a little bit, I guess, in Radford and other places too. But yeah, so it mainly JMU or UVA, or go that route too.
I didn't go to UVA that much. I did go, but they turned me out of a frat party, and I was like, screw this. You were pink, whatever.
I know you literally sip wine at your tailgate parties and eat various cheeses for football tailgating.
I take it back. I have a sister-in-law and a father-in-law who both went. They're Wahoos, so
I'm not making fun of it.
And I know she listens, so I love UVA for that. But I didn't party there that much.
No, well, their parties are different, and not everybody that goes there is that way. But honestly, it's a prestigious school to go to anyway. So if you say you went to UVA, people know. Okay, it's kind of like Duke and some of the other ones that aren't quite Ivy League, but should be.
Yes.
So yeah, there's our compliment on that for anyone who's listening that went to UVA.
But I do think it's funny that you and I did go to school all those years nearby, and and then our lives converged
Years,
about
yeah,
12 years later,
yeah,
at least. Yeah. I
they
know
did.
it's funny how life is, and we have a lot in
Now,
common, actually.
I know that's what's strange. Like that's what I was going to ask you, getting to know you a little bit more in this episode is, what is it about history that attracts you to like want to do a podcast and research more? Like we have a shit ton of stuff to do in life. So you want to take time out of your life to learn more and do this. What is it about it that fascinates you?
Oh, well, for me, I think a lot of it was growing up in a historical area.
Mm-hmm.
So we grew up near Williamsburg, Yorktown. My father really enjoyed history, the Civil War, and watched a lot of History Channel because of my dad growing up. And then I minored in American history in college. So I do have a degree in that. And I just have always been fascinated with it. And I really think that going back and looking at how people live their lives is it's entertaining, and yeah, I think that's why I like it. And then also I was a tour guide at Jamestown and Yorktown for a year after college. I didn't dress up. Not like your wife. Your wife
that's what I was getting ready to break up. Just like Megan did. I've seen pictures, and I know Troy, her brother, did too. And they dressed up and went down and did all the Yorktown charades. Which is cool, actually. I like that. And when she told me that and I saw the pictures, I want to make fun of her, and I did, but at the same time, I was kind of jealous that I never got to do that as a kid.
Well, Jeff, like, why do you like history?
I feel it's unputdownable. Is a great term that I'll speak on. I'm going to tell this story real quick about you. Sending me a list of words, synonyms, because aply Aaron feels like we use the word interesting too much, or we don't know any other words.
Here's my list.
let's read some of these words that we're going to use tonight, and in future nights here. So, absorbing, engrossing, riveting, gripping, compelling, compulsive, spellbinding, captivating, engaging, enthralling, entrancing, unputdownable, diverting, thought-provoking, stimulating, entertaining, amusing.
There are so many other words
but
we could use.
Unputdownable to me is like the best. That one is ridiculously the best.
Your wife didn't like that one.
Yeah, well, it's such is our life, together.
Actually, Egan did like that one. My husband was the one that was like, oh, that's the best one. That's why it's circled.
Yeah, but, unputdownable. I really like, and that it makes so much sense when you think about it, but I won't go into that. We'll keep using these words, and we're going to get smarter with the thesaurus and use synonyms and words so that we're not saying interesting a lot. But these things are interesting.
I think it was like 2019's word of the year or something.
Okay, well, 2020 is that there's a different word.
Unputdownable is perfect for 2020. There's
shit show.
You cannot put down 2020.
Yeah, we'd all like to. We'd all like to. Yeah. No, shit show is a good word, I think, term for this year. Yeah, completely. It is.
Undefinable.
Yes, and I'll shut up now on that. But I don't know. I don't have a reason. I should have thought of it when I asked you the question, like start thinking about what my answer is. But I've been completely. History's riveting and absorbing to me. It really is, using those words. And since I've been a little kid, it's what I've gravitated to. And, in history class and going on these little, like we went to Jamestown and Williamsburg and some of the other places, and like just being fascinated. I've always felt, and it's such a cliche statement, but I think I've said it before on this, like you don't know where you're going until you study where you've been, and as people, we need to look at where we've been in the past and mistakes we've made. And it just, there's this part of me that feels, this is going to share a little bit too much about me, and almost makes me seem a little narcissistic, right? And I will admit to this, as I, was a younger kid, I kind of was like, and not in a hateful.
You're narcissistic?
Yeah, I'll explain it. Like not in like a hateful, I really thought I was better than everybody, not in that kind of way, but I almost. It's weird, and I can't believe I'm going to share this like this, but I felt that if I like left a room, I didn't realize that people existed outside of my life for a while. It's the weirdest.
Well, I kind of think as a kid, I mean, you remember being a teenager, like it's all about you. You're not thinking about anything else. Just once you live a little bit and you actually get to experience like paying your own bills and
Yeah. So I grew out of that. I mean, I really have truly, and I'm not that naive anymore, but what really I think triggered that for me was learning about history and starting to understand,
mm-hmm.
dude, you're so small in the scale
Yeah.
of everything. Like your importance is so minimal. When I started learning about bigger people, I like just things that happen, events that happen, and then you start looking further and further back. And, like we talked about on the first episode of, prehistory, which we don't
Mm-hmm.
know much of anything about because it wasn't recorded. I started to put myself in check, so to speak. And that's when I think I really became a student of history and starting to just be completely fascinated by it. And I don't know, I think it's an innate, just this
Mm-hmm.
part of me that I gravitate to it more than anything, more than any other subjects in school.
Well,
And
didn't you
everything else.
say that you had some time in the nation's capital and it's all about history up here. So
Yeah.
I think that obviously it brought that around as it did for me. Like you're around it, you can't really escape it. Even if you don't even enjoy it, it's there. You're
Yeah.
learning about it. And I think that, probably seeing the monuments and, I do it with my kids now. I take them and they're fascinated by all of that. They
Yeah.
wonder
No.
where it came from and why it's there.
Yeah, I think it's hard to. I'm also the type of person I want to try to. I'm curious is the best way to put it, and I want to try to figure out why things are the way they are.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I think history makes the most sense to me, because it's
mm-hmm.
studying why things are the way they are and what's happened and why this event led to this event and why we are doing this. And I think it's just a natural fit for my personality. Ask me that again in a couple episodes and I'm gonna have a better answer.
Just like 2 episodes, you're like, I don't even think I believe in this anymore.
Look, I don't know.
It's all made up.
It might be. It still might be.
I know. No, I know. It's
because if you're listening to this show, we make it up as we talk about it. So
I'm not making anything up. I'm just reading the facts.
I'm reading the Google and the interwebs, and I'm figuring it out from that. So so we'll learn more about each other as we go, and and more about history and what's drawn us to us and to it and things like that. But I want to dive into, and pun intended, the seppuku, and I want to say.
Seppuku. I played the word.
I did too.
Google,
and they said
seppuku, right?
They said seppuku.
Oh, jeez.
One of us is right, one of us is wrong, or both of us are wrong. And I want to preface that for sure. That FYI, I'm going to mess all these words up tonight. People's names and stuff. I am not good with anything Japanese or anything like. I can't.
I've never really studied this. I mean, it's intriguing for sure. But I'm with Jeff. I'm probably gonna butcher some names here. No pun intended.
Pun intended, for sure. So seppuku, and you could say seppuku, and one of us will be right. Seppuku is a ritual suicide. So basically a culturally sanctioned suicide. So you in our modern world, in the Western world, think of physician-assisted suicide, euthanasia, things like that, where it's accepted. That's what this is, not just accepted, but really like supported and just put on a holiness of itself as well, which we'll talk about. But I don't know about you. I feel like in order to start talking about it, I feel like we have to start with talking about the samurai, because that's the people that this class of people where seppuku exists.
Yeah, who performed it.
Right. So I have a couple facts about samurai. I don't know if you put some things out there that you can add and whatnot as well. They were the warriors. We all know the term samurai, and we all understand, start thinking of ninjas, when you hear it and see that term. And that's what they were. They were warriors, but they had been around forever.
Yes,
forever.
they have.
Multiple centuries.
Yes.
And they were badass. And they were an entire social class. So this was like of importance in the Japanese history and culture. And I think I read a fact that at their peak, 10% of Japan's population were samurai. 10%.
Holy cow.
And so they said that equates today to every Japanese person right now is said to have at least some samurai blood in them at this point.
Incredible. And badass for them. Like they are just, after researching this, I have mad respect for samurai.
Right. Well, because they were required to practice obedience, skill, self-discipline, self-sacrifice, which we're talking about, bravery and honor, which you think about that in, modern day military and all of that. But these warriors were to an extreme. And I think the thing that was most interesting to me beyond that is they were highly literate and super
Yes,
cultured.
okay. So that is exactly what I was going to add to this. Was in ancient Japan, the arts were highly valued. So samurais had great artistic sensitivity, and that's what was expected of them. And despite training all of their lives to fight, the warriors were immersed in all kinds of the arts from an early age: writing, poetry, music, theater. And they marveled at their surroundings to bring meaning. And that's beautiful. Like,
Yeah.
it's a breathtaking statement, truly. And a lot of things don't do that to me. So that's why I really liked reading that about them and had mad respect for
Well, the art
it.
side is what really shocked me. On the art side, I can get it if they're literate, they have to study, they have to be, trained mentally and physically. But the art
Mhm.
side, it was spellbinding to me.
Mhm.
As I throw that word out there,
Truly, I think
unput
it is
downable.
spellbinding.
No, but in
Beguiling.
wow, really getting there. So they produced in the arts, they produced tea ceremonies, rock gardens, flower arranging. Like these are the things they were doing other than kicking ass as a samurai. They were like,
Mhm.
let me be over here doing these artsy things. And another interesting fact that I learned about them that I thought was super cool when you look back how long ago this was.
Mhm.
Um, there were women, female samurai warriors, and they fought alongside the males. Like it was literally, here's a combat. There's a male, female, male, female. They did a DNA test, and by they, again, I don't know names of people or whatever, but some people did some DNA tests, and it was the Battle of Sinban Masaburu. I'm just gonna throw some words out there,
Mhm.
but it's one of those, and it showed that 35 out of the 105 bodies were female.
We're women.
Yeah, so it's fascinating this culture, this
I
group.
didn't go into the female side as much as you did. I researched into into other aspects of it, but not the female side. So, wow. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. So that I don't have more really to add in Samurai other than they kick ass. They literally are top performing people in life. Period. Mentally, physically, and the things they do. So this is a great segue of why this
Yes, and I want
existed.
to add the samurai code of honor, because there was a samurai code of honor called the Bushido.
Yes.
This code of honor is known as Bushido, and it comes from the word bushi, which means warrior. And
Mm-hmm.
then the Japanese word do means the way. So Bushido means the way of the warrior. And it evolved from that earlier period when samurais they started off as archers and horsemen. And I just feel like we need to bring that up initially before we really go into who the samurai were, because the code of honor is a massive
Yeah.
aspect of what we're about to go into when we talk about seppuku.
Seppuku,
Mhm.
seppuku, or Harry Caray.
Or Harry Caray. Like, take me out to the ball game. I mean,
Yes, just like that Harry Caray.
yep.
Yeah, no, and maybe I will start calling it Harry Caray because it's at least
It's
I
a
know.
little easy. It flows off the words. And they did say in Western culture, we tend to use Harry Caray in our language when we speak of.
Because we can relate to that and know how to say that. Instead
No,
of seppuku.
actually, what did it say? It was just more familiar to non-Japanese speakers than the term seppuku.
Yeah,
American English speakers,
love Harry
truly.
Caray.
Well, wait. So, Jeff, can you tell me what Harry Caray actually means? Do you know the definition of it?
Yes, I do. It
Mhm.
literally means belly cutting.
Yeah,
Belly
belly
cutting.
button.
Literally cutting your belly. That's what Harry Caray mean. And seppuku, I gotta pause and make sure I say this word
Mhm.
because some other words might come out me trying to pronounce that. What does it mean? Do you know what that means?
Seppuku was cutting the belly,
Yeah,
abdomen belly cutting.
self-disembowelment is actually what the term meant.
Yes, the Japanese ritual suicide by disembowelment.
Yes. But and so that
And that's
actual
heavy.
term meant
That is very
self-disembowelment.
heavy to say.
That's a lot of words to say. Is a ritualized process of essentially disemboweling oneself with a dagger in either bleeding out
Mhm.
or having a peer, someone you select, go ahead and behead you instead.
Yeah, and I'm thinking right now of, like, everyone that's listening. So when we're talking about cutting the stomach, of course, we're referring to suicide.
Hmm.
And to me, when we chose this topic to talk about, in our culture in the West, suicide is considered, I think, weak. A lot of people think that in
Right.
the West, when someone commits suicide, that is weak. And I feel as if religion breeds a lot of that. Like a lot of, I mean,
Yep.
religion, the texts say in the Bible that if you commit suicide, then you're not going to be going to heaven and you won't see God. And so people get
Yep.
so upset. And talking and discussing these samurais and what we're about to get into, I think I want to put a forward message on this and state that I feel as if this culture wasn't bound to religion, they were bound to the honor. And so when they are disemboweling themselves, they were exercising their greatest control
Mm-hmm.
because this honor, killing yourself, was a higher calling to what they were going to do. And I think I want to say that before we get into like
Yep.
the guts of this, no
Pun
pun
intended.
intended. But I mean, I feel like I feel as if we owe these warriors respect in saying that, because we are looking at a totally different
Right.
side and culture. And our American viewers or whoever is listening may think, oh, this is disgusting. Why would you do this? This is so weak of them. But truly, when you think about what they're going to do, and then the ritual that's going to come with it, and I know that we'll talk about it.
Well,
But,
you're absolutely right, because number one, they had to practice this. Like, this was something they had to prepare for, so prepare to kill themselves in this fashion. But it was recognized as honorable. So for them, it was like, this is the ultimate thing I can do in this form of my body. This life form, this is the ultimate thing that I can do that's honorable, is to commit suicide in this way, in this fashion. And it was extremely difficult to do. Like, it's not like an easy way. It's not like typical suicide things that we think of where it's easy and, take some pills, whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
This was hard to accomplish, and you had to do it right. So that's why there was like practice in there, and practice, like meant studying and getting yourself prepared. And then obviously it was extremely painful, a way to go out, and you still had to sit there with honor and dignity and sit still as you're bleeding out.
Yes, I know. And if you did scream out, it could ruin the whole thing for you.
Yeah. So what was the point in doing it anyway?
Honorable. Yes, I know. I thought that. I was like, that would suck.
Well, and this is something I was going to talk about, but I'll bring it up here because it makes sense. Is, you had to pick a person. I think they were called a kashikununi. It's basically, they're known as a second. Let's use an English term. They were known as the second.
Yes, the second.
And so you picked a person and said, hey, like, yo, Jay, I love you, man. Hey, can you behead me?
They were well skilled at this.
Can you behead me?
But why are they well skilled at this?
Because they had to cut but leave a little bit hanging of their neck. So that so you weren't really beheaded. You sliced through and you left one little side of it so that their head didn't just go. Their spinal cord
was like still hooked.
Yeah. You had to do that in one swipe, though, because you couldn't like saw at it, because then that would ruin the honor of it. So I think all the pressure was on the person standing behind them. It's like, all right, okay, he just gutted himself. Now, all right, I practice this? Do I, how do I slice him, but don't go all the way?
Well, do you want to discuss the actual ritual of how it was done?
Yeah, let's talk about it.
Yeah, because we're like slicing and dicing. I can't. These puns are just flowing out. I'm sorry. I have to make this a little light, because it's pretty deep. But okay, so I noticed that there were, over time, Harry Caray or Seppuku transformed. Like, there was not a really standardized practice, and it said until the 17th century. So in the 12th and 13th centuries, Seppuku was performed by his second, that didn't really emerge then. So the rite was considered far more painful in the 12th and 13th centuries.
Because they just bled out.
The defining characteristic was plunging either the taki or the long sword or the short sword or a knife, a tanto, into the gut and slicing the abominum horizontally. In the absence of the second, the samurai would then remove the blade and stab himself in the throat, or fall from a standing position with the blade positioned against his heart. I mean, that is not an easy way to go.
No. Woo. Like, that's a lot of thought too, like, and a lot of skill to put together to kill yourself. A lot of skill.
And it's going to go into even deeper thought, because in the next period, 1600 to 1867, the Edo period, carrying out seppuku came to involve a detailed ritual, which you were just discussing. And that was, do you want to discuss this, or you want me to keep going?
You can go ahead and go. You're rolling with it. I'll add anything kind of flavor if I have it.
So this was usually performed in front of spectators.
Yep. Drinking for sure.
Yes. And it was definitely planned. So this was also, it said, as opposed to one performed on a battlefield. So now it's starting to happen on the battlefield as well. But this one is actually planned. And the order was that the samurai bathed, they dressed in white robes, and they served his favorite food for his last meal. When he had finished, the knife and cloth were placed on another sanbo and given to the warrior, dressed ceremonially, with his sword placed in front of him and sometimes seated on special clothes. The warrior would prepare for death by writing a death poem. He would probably consume an important ceremonial drink of sake, so he'd take a shot. He would also give his attendant a cup meant for sake, so you take a shot with him.
Yeah, get you drunk right before you behead me.
And then he would dress in a shini shozoku, or a white kimono worn for death. Now, can we go back to that death poem? Because I know you have a few rounded up for us, because I think
let's do that.
Everybody kind of understands the order of how you kill yourself.
Yeah, let's talk about the death poem, because then I'm going to talk about what they did, how they actually had to do to like stab and do all that too. So let's talk about the death poem first, because this is before it.
Yes, they write it before. Yep.
So and this is what's so weird and interesting. And I use that word again because I don't have my list of other, my synonyms to throw one out for me. This is what's enthralling about this to me is this is so honorable. So you got to look at like the instances of where you would, commit Harry Caray, the best way to put it, where you would actually do this. And like you said, on the battlefield. So if you lost, you didn't want to become a prisoner of war. You didn't want to get captured. If something else bad happened or you did something wrong, and it's the respectable way to go out. So you already prepared mentally for this. You already knew this becoming a samurai. Like this could possibly be my end. This is part of being a samurai. So you go through this process, you eat your food, you get sake. And I think I read somewhere that you could take 4 sips and you couldn't do more than 4 because the word 4 was somehow in Japanese related to death. So 4 was it. You can only do 4. Probably because you don't want to get drunk either while you're cutting yourself that way in front of all these people. But regardless, it's still kind of gruesome. So before you get to the cutting, some of them, not all of them, but a lot of them, because we talked about samurai and how artistic they were, wrote these death poems. They weren't allowed to talk about the death itself, actually. That was part of it. They couldn't talk about the death or dying, so to speak, but talked about they wrote a death poem that they read before doing this to themselves. And I have a couple examples and samples of some, and I'm sure you do too. So you go ahead and tell me, read some of yours. Maybe they're the same as mine that I found.
Do you want to present the name of the samurai and then the death poem?
If I had the name of the samurai, I would absolutely present it.
I'll give you a few. Well, there's a couple different. I feel like some of them shifted with the death poem depending on the century.
Yeah. Okay.
So here's 1106 to 1180. So he died in 1180. His name was Minamoto no Yorimasa. And he was a samurai that fought in the Jinpai Wars and defended a temple and helped monks. Good guy. His death poem says, like a fossil tree from which we gather no flowers, sad has been my life, faded no fruit to produce. And his biggest regret in his final moments was never having had a child.
Wow.
I know.
Wow, that's pretty sad.
It is.
Figured that one out for him before. I mean, I guess he couldn't. It happening on the battlefield.
How old is he? Let's see.
70 something.
Yeah, he was old. Yeah.
I mean, he can still produce a child if he wanted, but
then have all the luck.
That's what you call it.
Give me one death poem. Give me another one, because these are I found them fascinating and deeply, very mournful. Really, I mean,
they are. So this one, this one's kind of boring, but I'm going to read it.
Read it. No,
it was even if my body decays on the fields of Musashi, my Japanese soul will live forever. And I picked that one because it's pretty self-explanatory what this guy, and they weren't supposed to technically talk about the death. This guy did, but he's basically saying like, look, homie, I'm out, I'm done with this, but because of this honor, because of what I'm doing, my soul will live forever. You know, that's it's just like belief in religion and everything else that people have. And you dedicate your life to Christ or whatever your religion is. You believe that your soul is supposed to go somewhere and do something. And so when I read that, that's how I related this and truly understood why they did it. Was this is my soul. This is bigger than my life right now and what I'm doing. This is my honor. This is, you know,
I
so
think you'd have to feel that way.
Yeah, for sure.
What they were about to do.
I could honestly, true story. I would have never been a samurai in a past life. Like I would have saw what they were doing in past and like, nah, guys.
Oh yeah, and we have some secondhand accounts of people that.
Yes,
I know. I've read quite a few, and I mean, mostly Westerners.
I'll be like, hey, I'll be a blacksmith. Like I'll go in here and like make some stuff that y'all need, you know. But I'm not participating in what's happening here. But yeah, read me another one you got. I know you do.
All right. Let's go up to 1667 to 1701. This is Asano Naganori.
Mm-hmm.
Asano is especially known to every lover of Japanese culture as the master of the 47 Ronin entrusted themselves to avenge. So let me just tell everybody, a Ronin is a drifter or a wanderer. So they're a samurai, but they're a drifter. Yeah, they don't have a master or a lord.
Yeah.
So they're masterless.
And we'll talk a little more about that later.
Okay. On the day of his death, Asano committed the crime of calling a Wakizashi in the shogun's castle to murder Kira. So, you know, he attempted to murder somebody. This was his poem. More than cherry blossoms, inviting the wind to take them away. I wonder what to do with the rest of spring. What? Like, that's gorgeous.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
They're out here writing Shakespeare right before they kill themselves.
I know. They're in thought. They're in tune with, I feel they're being, and this goes back to when I was reading about this, like the differences in culture.
Yeah.
Truly. I mean, we keep saying honor, but the way that they respected their families and the religion that a lot of them are Buddhists.
Yeah.
You know, so I think it takes you back to like the different types of religions that people, or just the country that you're in, what they care about.
It's insane because American culture, we don't have a lot of that, you know, and
we don't.
It's very much what's in front of me right now. You know, what can I get for myself right now? We're all this way. I mean, we were raised this way, just inevitably, like no fault to anyone. It's just the way that our culture is. And it's an eye opener for sure for me. Like, again, knowing who I am right now, I've said this before. I believe in reincarnation. I was living during this time at some point, probably. I was not a samurai, and I know this deep in my soul. My soul is telling me, dude, no, there's no way you were writing these poems right before this happened. I got two more, and
yeah, please,
I'll read them.
I think they're fascinating.
I have a longer one and then a shorter one. This long one, I don't know. Like, again, I didn't write down people's names and stuff, but you can Google it and figure out based on what I'm saying if you want. But this person said, even a lifelong prosperity is but one cup of sake. A life of 49 years is passed in a dream. I know not what life is nor death. Year in, year out, all but a dream. Both heaven and hell are left behind. I stand in the moonlit dawn, free from clouds of attachment. And to me, I was like, cool, like he's excited.
That's a longer one too.
Yeah, it was a lot of words. Probably just got lost in translation. But he's excited. Like he's kind of relieved almost. It's almost like I'm free from clouds of attachment. Like I'm not stuck here. I don't have, this is my choice and I'm doing this. This is my choice. I'm excited for this and my soul is free now. You know, basically is what this guy believed, so to speak. That's what I'm taking from it. And you know, he obviously was a better person than I am, so he might have meant more about it. But
well, you don't know what people deal with. You know, why he may have wanted to leave. A lot of it was because their master died.
Well, he could have done something wrong. He could have murdered someone, and he's like, "Sorry, guys."
He assaulted someone.
Yeah, I don't know who he was, but he's happy. He's happy in this moment, not the moment that's about to happen, because I know there's some physical turmoil that's about to happen to him. But he knew that was temporary. You know, and that,
I want another one. Do you have another one?
I do.
I do. I mean, I hope people like to hear these, but I do. I think
there's always the fast forward button. You can just move your finger over a little bit and get past this point right now if you don't want to hear more of it.
Yeah, I think one more. All
right, go for it.
No. Oh, I thought you had one. Please.
I do. It's super short though. All right. And this is my favorite one, so I saved it for it. So Again, don't know who did it, who said it, who wrote it. Live interestingly, love that word. Live interestingly in an uninteresting world. That's what they wrote. That's it.
Even after studying all those arts. Oh,
I loved it though. That was my favorite. Like, it didn't have to be this beautiful, poetic justice and I'm talking to you and like this cryptic message that you can interpret your own way. He's basically saying life is uninteresting. Life is super uninteresting. So live interestingly. Or any of the other synonyms that we have. He could say.
He didn't have kids, did he?
live intriguing, live entrancing, live captivating, live absorbing, live riveting. He could say all of those things. I thought it was interesting because it's like, look, my life, this is how I interpreted it. My life has kind of been nothing and it's been boring up to this point. Right now, I'm interesting. This is my interesting moment of my life.
It is.
So I closed on that one. You didn't seem very impressed with that one, but I liked it.
I did like it. I just felt as if like you're taking your life, and he didn't find it. Well, I guess what he was trying to state is that what he's about to do now is the most interesting aspect of
exactly
what he lived through.
That's it. Like, I'm now an interesting person. I've done something interesting with my life, but I don't agree. He was a samurai. Like, that's interesting in itself.
But everybody was, so many people were samurai. So I guess he didn't think he was.
It's true.
He had as much value.
So let's talk about now the process of what happens. So you read this poem. I imagine you had your little sips. I say poem weird. I heard that back once. I say poem. He's a poem. But so you read this poetry and you share it with the crowd. They're like cheering. They're drinking their sake. They're like all like, yeah, man, let's get it. Let's rip it up. Like, let's see what happens. But it's a very classy place, I imagine. Unlike the last episode with Selling Your Wife, where I think it was very, just complete like chaos, and everybody was out there yelling at each other.
Well, when you're selling your wife, you're making a lot of people that
cows were shitting all over the place, and you were stepping on it, taking your wife. Like, that's how I imagine that was happening
in her harness.
Yeah, exactly.
Super honorable.
Standing next to Beth.
I just thought about this. We totally swung that.
Yeah, we did. Now we're talking about honorable things in people, but it's still a weird conversation talking about suicide. All right, so now you've done that. You drink your drink. You're standing out there. You got your homie behind you with the big sword.
Second.
Yeah, you're second. He's behind you, and you got a couple other people chilling beside you, and you're like, hey, guys, this is my last word. So, for instance, this guy's last words, those 2 lines about interesting life, and now it's interesting whatever. Then shit gets real. Then it gets real. Then you grab your dagger. I'm sure there's a term for it that I didn't write down. And you grab it. You insert the blade into the side of your belly close to your ribs. So I'm like doing this as I tell you. Nobody can see it, but I'm just trying to like visualize it for myself. So everybody at home, take your hand, your prominent hand, and then just stick a pretend little dagger into the side of your belly close to your ribs. So you stick it in there. Then immediately you draw sharply across the gut. So go ahead and do that. Let's make that motion to disembowel yourself. Then rotate the knife and yank it up. So stick it in, over, up.
You're hitting like your kidney.
And everything spills out. Imagine that, spilling out. Let's say you have the pain tolerance of, I don't know who has this kind of pain tolerance, but of just somebody just from heaven themselves, right? You have this insane amount of pain tolerance.
Wait, you forgot like the craziest part, I think, is that after you sever your stomach and you lift it up, you're supposed to stick your neck out so that your assistant, your second.
Well, this is before this, though. This is just one little caveat.
Oh, no. Why? Yeah.
So before this, so if you have the pain tolerance and can do this, this is the honorable of honorable, right? If you can do this next thing, you got this pain tolerance. Before your homie knows to behead you, you look back at him or you give him the nod like, hey, bro, hold on a second. I got more I'm about to do here. You go ahead. You take the blade out at this point. Then you stab yourself lower in your stomach and then draw up through the previous cuts to your sternum. So you've done all the other things. Now let's just grab it, take it down real low, and then shoot it all the way up. So that it just cuts again and make sure everything spills out. Then you give the nod to your homeboy behind you to go ahead and slice your head off, but leaving part of it dangling, so that everyone could see. Now, I will say that was something that was instituted. I can't remember what century, but at some point, having a second was instituted. I want to say it's 1700. So for several hundred years, you just sat there painfully and bled out. You didn't have a second to chop your head off.
And a lot of times you would grab your knees, I think, and then cover your face.
Yeah.
I think I read that they would, if you didn't have a second, you covered your face and knelt down until you bled out.
Yeah. So you bled out back in the day, or you got your head chopped off after you did that to yourself, and you still sat there with honor while you knew all this was happening. So women, and another point with women, whether they were part of the samurai class, whether their husband was a samurai that, just performed Harry Caray, they actually followed suit, or women who were being captured and thought they were being raped or something.
Yes.
Prevent that. And they did it a little differently.
Yeah.
They slashed their throats with a little tiny dagger.
Yeah. They would also they often tied their knees together so their body would be found in a dignified pose, despite the convulsions of death. So invading armies would often enter homes to find the lady of the house seated alone, facing away from the door, and then approaching her, they would find that she had ended her life long before they reached her.
Yeah. Yeah.
I am finding that this wasn't the best episode for me for a podcast because I'm at a loss for words. Like, I don't really
That's not good for a podcast.
Know how to discuss this. Well, whenever anything kind of boggles my mind and it takes me into deeper thought, I don't have that many words for this. So,
well, yeah. I'll help you here. There was a gruesome version. So after they started bringing on the second, your beheader, then it became known as Jinanji Giri. I'm totally messing that up. But so this again was where you sat and bled out again. So now it was become a more gruesome.
It was a more taxing form.
Yes. Right. And the admiral in charge of the kamikaze runs in World War II, he took his life this way. And they said it took him 15 hours to bleed out and die. That he sat there like that. 15 hours of sitting there. And you got to imagine, I don't know if he did this on a battlefield, if he did this in more in a ritual, setting where people came. I don't know. But so he lost. That's also when you think of military, when he knew coming into it, right? He lost in the war, and this was inevitably what he had to do.
Well, yeah, but he chose it, so when did it really go away? I had read, because that you're talking about 1940.
Yeah. So in late 1860s, 70s, it was basically prohibited. They were like, we don't really
prohibited, but people continue to do it. Because the last death, I want to say this is 1970.
I found one even more recent I'm going to talk about too. It's interesting. So I got a couple of stories on them, but yeah. So this World War II, admiral. But yeah, it was, I actually should clarify a point. Something I kind of we talked over too, is there were two forms of Harry Caray. There was,
I was going to bring this up.
Good. Yeah. Voluntary and obligatory.
Yes.
We've talked about voluntary. Really?
Yes, and then there's the capital punishment side for disgraced samurai.
Yes.
So we talked about all the honorable ones that either committed Harry Caray because they lost their master, or they're losing on the battlefield and they know they'll be taken prisoner of war. But then there is more of the more common form, which was actually the capital punishment of the disgraced samurai. And they had to commit pretty serious offenses like rape, robbery, corruption, unprovoked murder, or treason. And then the samurai were generally told of their offense in full and then given a set time for them to commit seppuku, usually before sunset on a given day. And then on the occasion, if the sentenced individuals were uncooperative or outright refused to end their own lives, seppuku could be carried out by an executioner, or more often the actual execution was carried out solely by decapitation.
Yes.
Yeah. And then unlike voluntary seppuku carried out as capital punishment did not necessarily absolve or pardon the offender's family of the crime. So depending on the severity of that crime, all or part of the property of the condemned could be confiscated, or the family would be punished by the strip of rank, sold into long-term servitude, or executed. The family could also be executed.
Yeah.
So, total difference there. Same
Well,
type of death, but different.
well, it's something I read that was interesting. People that committed these crimes, and if Harry Caray was, that what they were basically supposed to do, to atone for this crime, it wasn't a deterrent. They found out that it actually wasn't a deterrent because it was so honorable that people were like, yeah, cool. I'm going to go commit this crime. And I know that I'm ultimately going to have to commit this. Mm-hmm. And I'm okay with that. Like that trade-off is okay for me, and knowing that is the consequence for it. So they realize in order to deter a lot of the crimes and some of the things that were happening, they had to tell them you weren't allowed to commit seppuku.
Wow.
It's because it meant so much to them at that time. So not only were they not allowed to do that, they were stripped of their rank at the same time. So that prevented them more to commit less crime at that point. So it was interesting to read that meant so much to them that it was kind of like, that's not even a consequence. I'm excited that I get to do that, that I'm still going out honorably, in this way, even though I've committed this crime. So it's weird. I can't rationally relate to it.
Yeah, but I think that's because the it's like massive cultural difference, especially during this time. And I still feel like it probably is today. I've never been to Japan. It's too damn expensive to fly there. But I just think that there's this shift. And then when you think about World War II and like kamikazes and bonsai and all that stuff, there is that deeper meaning for them, that when you lose your life in that way, you're like giving of your life, but you're not really giving your life, you're giving it for country. And I feel as if all military, that's why you sign up, that will happen, but they actually feel almost go in not to be a hero, but to make something. It's something is much bigger than themselves. They all go in that way, that it's their country. The mission is much bigger than themselves. And that's selflessness. It is the ultimate selflessness.
Yeah, and that's why I go back to this World War II, because it's more of a modern time. That this admiral knew that, okay, if we lose, this is how I'm going to go out. I'm going to choose to do this. And I think it was the 1870s where it was prohibited, but they said there was a huge resurgence during World War II.
Yep, I saw that too. Yeah, it said numerous soldiers and civilians chose to die rather than surrender at the end of World War II.
Yeah, I all around, like it is fascinating. And number one, like I said, I heard of it faintly in my life. Like I feel like I've heard stories of this. Like it wasn't like a complete shock where I was like, oh, I've never heard of that before.
Yeah.
But the details of it, they're gruesome. It's bizarre more than anything, but it's also just I keep going back to, I can't relate because our culture is so different. And I know like the closest thing that we have, like in Europe, they had chivalry, but the closest thing we have here is our military. And like you said, in committing themselves, to the country and the honor, for the country. But this is so extreme, and it's such a passion that I don't think any of us ever experience or ever truly know or understand, where you will sign up and say, I'm willing to kill myself in this fashion, in this gruesome way, for a cause that's bigger than me, for a cause that I believe in.
The only thing I can compare it to in the United States are when I think about cults.
Yes, true.
People that like drink poison because they think this one dude,
Jonestown,
Jonestown.
And we'll talk about some of these cults and some of these murders and things. Just want to preface that and put that out there for some of our future episodes of people that you haven't heard of, because that stuff's interesting. So yeah, you're right. I could see that as a cult in this country.
No, I don't think there's a lot of honor in that. I think that was more just, oh my God, I really need to go to heaven, with this God, the second God on earth, where these folks were actually, that's one dude where this was a whole full concept of country, leadership.
Well, you live and die by this. Like you said, it was, a class, like it was, your life. you know, the cult's more relatable to I'm searching for something, and I
more
feel like,
meaning. I'm looking for meaning, where these people had
they
had
knew
that
their
meaning
meaning.
there. They were writing their death poems like right before they died, and they had
Yeah,
all of that
they
meaning.
were confident in their meeting, and I guess you could say cult people that have, you know, in cults have killed themselves were confident in their meaning at that purpose in that time too. I mean, to
They
drink
found
the
it in a much
Kool-Aid.
shorter time period, where these
Yeah,
folks pretty much were bred to do this from the beginning. And
I have 3 stories
okay,
of Seppuku. I hope it's pronounced right, but whatever. It's
Harry Caray.
Harry Caray. I have, and it's so weird to say that too,
I
because
because,
I hear him in
well,
my
that's how
head.
I always knew it. I remember
Yeah,
being a Cubs fan, like you
yeah.
are, hearing that for the first time and then thinking. I have only one story,
Okay.
and so go ahead if yours are much better than mine. Like I
Well, no,
just
we'll share all of them. So
there were so many of them.
if I have one of yours when I start it, stop me since I have 3, and then you tell it. But
Oh yeah. You probably there were so many.
so one of them was in 1868.
Mm-hmm.
There were samurai soldiers who killed 11 unarmed French soldiers.
Okay.
Do you have that one?
Nope.
All right, good.
I know
All
what
right.
you're talking about. I read about it.
Yeah, okay. You didn't think it was good enough to tell us the story, but
No. I
so
have it in here, but
11 unarmed French soldiers or sailors. So the samurai soldiers killed them, and after this, Japan's French consul Leon Roche, I wrote somebody's name down for once, insisted that the samurai be executed.
Yep.
So he assumed that they'd be executed by beheading or firing squad, and he sent one of his dudes out there, you know, to witness what was going down. He's like, look, you know, general or whoever, like captain, I need you to roll out, see what's going down, make sure that these dudes die. While the captain is out there, he sees the ritual of seppuku happening, and he saw how each samurai marched out one by one and started stabbing themselves. And it hit him so hard.
It bothered him. Yeah.
That he stopped it. He was at 11. He was like, there was 20 of them that were supposed to kill themselves. They were supposed to be executed. At 11, he was like, I'm done. Like, y'all are out of your damn mind. I don't know what I'm watching here. I thought y'all were just going to be shooting some bullets.
Disturbing to him. He couldn't take it.
He stopped it. He said, I'm done with this. Like, cool.
He was like, I'm pardoning this.
The other 9 dudes, and the other 9 dudes were probably upset because they didn't get to do it.
They were.
So
I'm finally laughing. Like, it's so serious.
It is, but it's not for them. It is serious, but it's also they respect themselves for it. And so anyway, let's hear your story. I'm sure it's better.
No, it's actually kind of sad because.
All right, so you can bring us down.
This is about a young 16, 17-year-old sons. And did you see this? It was called, there's a movie about it. And it's called Byakutai.
No.
So Byakutai was part of Azu's 4-unit military. It was formed in April of 1868. So 1868 is a popular time right now. There must have been a lot of fighting. This was in the wake of the Battle of Toba Fushimi. Pretty much what happened was there was a group of young 16 to 7-year-old boys, and they were meant to be a reserve unit. Long story short, they thought they saw their town on fire, like their fortress. But it ended up just being like a small section. And when they saw this happen, they all committed Harry Caray. So
you were trying to pronounce the word. You're like, wait.
Yeah, I was like, seppuku, Harry Caray. So they all committed suicide. And when the families came to see, to get them, they thought they were alive. They were all dead. And this story made it all the way to Italy. Like Mussolini at Pompeii erected a column at Pompeii for these boys because he was deeply impressed by their loyalty to their lord. Now, this was an Italian fascist dictator, so no wonder he was like all about the loyalty. But still, in 1928, he donated the column. And then there's also a topic of plays, books, films, TV shows. Even in like 2007, there's a TV drama. So this carried on, and on the column, it says, no matter how many people wash the stones with their tears, these names will never vanish from the world. I just thought it was really sad because they were young.
Yeah.
And probably that's why they didn't really get the story on the real fire, and that's why they killed themselves. They like jumped the gun.
That is kind of sad, though. And speaking of pop culture, that moves into my second story, which is 47 Ronin. And there, I'll start with the fact that there was a movie about this with Keanu Reeves. It was awful. I've seen it. I've seen it. I'll play on TV and stuff when I'm flipping channels, and I watched it for 8 minutes one time.
It was that bad.
It was so well. Here's the problem.
He acts very well, so
I just see him from Bill and Ted. Like that's how I always, or Speed. Like
no, Matrix.
Yeah, or that. He's always the same way. Great guy, from what I understand. Super great guy. Does so much for community. Like just a really down to earth, relatable dude.
Great actor.
Yeah, but still gets paid some. Yeah, it's like Sandra Bullock. He's to me the Sandra Bullock. Like
that movie together.
I know, but she does the same kind of acting in every movie as well. And I know people are going to hate that because people love her, but I don't get it. People love Keanu Reeves too. So here's this movie. I'll talk about the movie first, just to get that out of the way, so people aren't confused, and then talk about the real story. But the movie was awful, and critics were just shit all over it. You know, like they really did. So the budget of it was somewhere around $175 to $225 million to make this movie. No, they won't share. I'm sure it was $225 million. And the problems that you had with this moving into, like just out of the gate, man, this is the problem. So you had a first time director who was directing this massive budget film, who happened to be dating Ridley Scott's daughter at the time. So you see why that happens. He retold a famous legend from Japan that only is known in Japan, nowhere else. No, he knows nothing about the Japanese culture, nothing about any of this stuff. So the background was just already too much for him, this first time director. And it starred a white American actor. Like that was the problem with this movie to begin with. I think it grossed worldwide. When I was looking at it, it was around 48 million. So maybe that paid Keanu Reeves. You know, they got their money back to cover.
When was this made? What year?
I think it was in 2013 or 2014.
Oh, it wasn't too long ago. So he was known.
Oh yeah. This was a bad decision in his acting career, and that's saying a lot for his acting career. So anyway, let's get the movie out of the way. 47 Ronin, which I always thought was a stupid name. I always never understood the name. Now I get it.
It's 47 Drifters.
Right. So 47 Ronin. So Ronin, we talked about, they're samurai without a leader. Specifically, the 47 Ronin refers to a story where it's a true story. In the 18th century, group of samurai went to avenge the memory of their fallen leader. Their leader, Asano Naganori, he committed seppuku for assaulting a court official named Kira Yoshihaka. So
I like how you do that. You're like, you have to move your mouth when you say the last
it's going to mess up anyway. So he committed Harry Caray, their leader did. So now they're leaderless, so they're Ronin. That's what they are at this point. They planned for a year to revenge their master's honor. So they went and killed this Kira person after a year. So I think the movie, if you ever watch it, is literally them just planning it and finally going to kill. And then they were obliged to commit Harry Caray for the crime of murder. And I don't know if there's more to the story other than this is 47 Ronin, what they were doing. But the reason it's popular, actually, it's celebrated in Japan on December 14th.
Oh, wow.
This Ronin story, this 47 Ronin, like it is super popular.
I only read like a little bit.
Yeah, they celebrate on December 14th. And the reason it's so popular is because it's emblematic of the loyalty, sacrifice, persistence, honor that people should display in their daily lives. So it's like these guys respected their leader, their master so much. They came up with a way to, persevere from that. They schemed up a plan, their loyalty to him. And then they knew that they were sacrificing themselves to avenge their master, who was, who had to commit himself, but really everybody had to commit suicide. So it was like a lot of murders happening. It was like,
they did. I know.
It's crazy. So that was 47 Ronin. And I wanted to bring it up because the movie, I think, probably doesn't do it any justice. So if you're listening to this and you're like, oh, I watched that movie and it wasn't that great, like don't base the actual truth behind Harry Caray and what is really there based on Keanu Reeves' performance in this awful first-time director's performance, of this film. So
it's a shame. There's so many films like that.
Oh, so many. If we like just based history and stuff off of movies, like maybe that's a spin-off podcast for us, is just taking movies and then talking about history based on movies.
We could tear it up.
The last story, though, to me is a bit more interesting than any of them, and that's why I saved it for last. But there was a guy named Isao Inokuma. Sure, it's not how it's pronounced, but that's his name on here. Here on this podcast, that's his name. He was an Olympian in judo. So he competed in judo in the Olympics. He won the gold medal in the heavyweight division in the 1964 Olympics, which was actually hosted in Tokyo. So I'm sure they were proud. And at the final match, he faced a Canadian named Doug Rogers. I just wanted to throw names in because I don't ever do that. So I'm throwing these names out there.
I like it.
So Doug Rogers, a Canadian, they're in this final, judo match. I've never watched, performed or anything, so I don't know a lot about it. Very little happened in this final. Like in the first 10 minutes afterwards, the referee threatened to disqualify both of them because people were bored out of their damn minds. Like they weren't doing much. So the referee was like,
fighting?
Yeah, he was just like, look, y'all suck, man. What are y'all doing? This is the final of the Olympics for the gold medal. The Isao guy, he won the gold just because he had slightly higher activity. That's how he won the gold for this judo match this year. They're like, oh gosh, here's a 5th place ribbon for this guy. Like that. He's slightly higher activity. He wins the gold medal of the damn Olympics. Like, well, what the fuck? Like, I
mean, think about like Olympic activities. Like, what is one of the weirder ones that you watch that just does not seem like it would be an Olympic sport?
Yeah,
there's some out there.
So there's more to this guy, right? Obviously. So he gets this gold medal, and I'm sure shit's like going real for him at this point. It happened in Tokyo. People forgot that it was a boring match and it wasn't fun. They're just like, hey, bro, you brought the gold medal home. It happened here. So I'm like, sure, like he was like a Kardashian for a little bit, hanging out, Shooter McGavin, everybody just saying what's up when he went into clubs and stuff like that. He went on later to train the Tokyo Metropolitan Police Department as a judo instructor. And then he became the CEO of Tokai Construction Company.
I see this not going well.
Yeah, this was his demise. He becomes the CEO of this construction company. It's going well. Like everybody knows this guy. Like I'm saying, like he's probably walking down the street and it's like Bruce Jenner kind of a guy. Like everybody knows him, And I guess Bruce Jenner isn't a guy anymore, so I can't say Bruce Jenner kind of guy anymore.
He's a woman.
Yeah, so, like Caitlyn Jenner's former self. So I think 2001, there were a lot of financial suffering and losses with this company, and he committed Harry Caray in 2001. This gold medalist of this very uninteresting fight, or match or whatever you want to call it, martial arts, and lives this life for a while. And for whatever reason, we know the reason now after doing this, the honor feels he has to kill himself. But what intrigued me the most is he killed himself because of some external measure that we hadn't talked about at all in this show. So we talked about people that lost in the battlefield, committed crimes, they lost their master. He did it because of financial reasons.
Well, I guess there's honor in that. What did he do at the company? Was he the head of it?
Yeah.
Did you say he was the head?
Yeah, he was the CEO.
It's like going financial ruin for that. I guess the honor for him was that he considered that company maybe a master. It held a lot of value for all the employees that were there, and they all lost their jobs. And so he decided.
But he wasn't a samurai.
Well, no, but I think people consider themselves to be.
It's just weird to me all around. Like I know there was a guy that was a famous poet or artist or something in the 70s. I'm trying to figure out who it was that had done this as well. But this guy, it was a form of capital punishment. Yeah.
He was punishing himself. This wasn't an honor. Maybe this was in defeat.
Yeah.
Like he decided to kill himself because he sucked.
Yeah, he was defeated. He thought he sucked his financial loss, which is a lot of reasons why people do kill themselves.
Yes.
Financial loss. But I think that was the most recent that I saw in my little humble search. Was in 2001.
Damn, that was more than me. I thought it was 1970. It was some author.
Yeah, it was an author.
And he tried to like take over a military base or something.
Yeah, that'll do it for you.
No, he was a writer. Yeah, writer and emperor.
That'll seppuku you out of here. Yeah.
He tried to take over a command post to protest Japan's military policy. So I was like, what?
So I feel like this episode, it's had such a mix of flavors and just kind of ups and downs of emotions and whatnot. I mean, if I had some words to describe it, I would say intriguing and captivating and spellbinding.
Well, I feel like there was a lot of
gripping.
Yeah. Well, there was a lot of grace in this episode too.
Yeah.
And I wrote that down as like an adjective in my notes after reading through all of this, because what I took away from this was that what they did, the ones that were honoring themselves, they were trying to establish the balance and the grace of life. And they considered it worthy enough to take their life away to establish that. Again, this is very heavy, and so I'm not laughing, and it's a little bit different, but it's very noteworthy, and I'm so glad that we did this podcast because I think a lot of what we talked about, even the death poems, they're untold. People don't really know much about them, and there's just much depth and
there's a lot.
Talent.
This could be multiple episodes for sure.
Oh, there's so much more that we could talk about with this. Yeah,
maybe we
just
revisit
the samurai lifestyle.
Yeah, exactly. That itself was interesting to me. So where do we go from here? Who knows? The next episode.
We're gonna laugh a little bit more. We'll shift it again. This was a big shift from wife selling.
Well, will we though? Because we're jumping into October, and I feel like that's when we dedicate it to like serial killers and like really scary shit. That
is next Thursday, October 1st. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
yes,
we're going into thrillers and
scary stuff for several episodes.
Halloween
type stuff. So I don't know if it's going to get real positive here for a while on anything, but I dig it.
I mean, I dig it too. I was going to say I enjoyed researching for this. I hope people enjoyed listening to us talk about it, but I liked the research. This might have been my favorite one.
I hope that every episode we say that. This was my favorite one. This was my favorite one. But that means we're progressing in some way, at least for ourselves, whether the listeners enjoy it or not. And
I think I like this more because I don't know that much about Japanese culture. So this was newer to me.
Yeah, that's why it was more difficult, because I could picture, the wife selling. Like I told you, I could just like imagine it. I could smell it. Like I knew what was happening with it. But with this one, I had a hard time, which was great. And hopefully we were able to translate that enough for people to follow along and understand. And if not, slide in our DMs and tell us, say, y'all shit sucked. I didn't understand it. Like y'all dropped the ball on this one.
Did you notice there were so many visuals?
Yeah.
Because remember, they loved art. So they did a lot of that.
This is not something you want to have a lot of visuals on.
Oh, there were so many visuals. The visual they used on Instagram was exactly the ritual that we discussed.
I know.
So, and I zoomed in on that. It's just like, I think because it's so different from what we know that it's that bit is so intriguing. You just want to zoom in and figure out like why would someone still do this? Even after this episode, it's hard to comprehend it.
Well, we'll drop in real quick since you said that. Follow us on IG at Yesteryear Untold or go to yesteryearuntold.com and to see stuff like that, imagery and things like that.
Send us questions.
Yeah, shoot us some questions and some, just like this week, some ideas for some shows, things that you've seen. And I've had a couple of those in the last week where people are like, hey, you should do this. Hey, you should do this, so we're stacking it up, and we have about 300 more episodes to do, here and like to get through it. And, but I'm excited. I like when more people are involved in helping us come up with the idea. So it's not just something that we selfishly, want to talk about. But.
No, I love to hear what other people find interesting or thought provoking.
Yes. And I will say, if you want to be a guest, like we're eventually going to get some professors and some historical, really smart people that understand this more than I do.
And some friends.
Yeah, and friends as well. But if you want to be a guest and you just want to come in and chat about something and you have an idea and a topic and we're like, yeah, that's cool as shit, let's do it. Let's do it. Like it's open to whatever. I don't care if we know you or not. Like it's whatever. if you come on and you talk like a dumbass, we'll just make fun of you. Like, that's literally what happens.
No.
So.
I would like to think that everybody's opinion matters, but I guess it doesn't, does it?
I'm not gonna pretend like it does. I won't even lie. So, but yeah, I enjoyed this episode. It's been great, and it's fun. In week to week, this gets better and better, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. So it's been good.
Yep. Yeah, this one was a chill. Like, it was mellow.
Yeah,
I feel more mellow tonight.
Good.
Talking about
not hyped up on the wife selling. So, no, but until next week, hopefully maybe we'll mix it up. Who knows? But for now, we'll probably mix it up into some scariness and some
let's go.
Some crime type stuff and haunting and all that.
Hauntingly beautiful.
So stay tuned. Yeah, stay tuned to that. It's been good times. Aaron, as always, you do an amazing job. So I'm happy that you're here doing this.
Peace.
All right. I'm not saying deuces anymore. I don't like saying it. So I'm just going to say goodbye.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Bye.
Asking me questions.